The galaxy had moved on. Time passed, as it always did, and old memories faded like whispers in the wind. 5,000 years had passed since humanity had disappeared, and in that time, Earth had become nothing more than a legend. Once a powerful species, humans were known throughout the galaxy for their strength, ingenuity, and ability to shape worlds. They had been part of a vast network of intergalactic alliances, their ships cutting across the stars as easily as a bird flies across the sky. But that was long ago, before the war that broke their spirits, before they vanished into silence. War with the alien invaders was brutal, fierce, and unforgiving. Humanity fought with everything they had, but in the end they were defeated. The alien species that had once seen humanity as a worthy rival turned on them, eradicating nearly every human colony across the galaxy. Earth itself was left shattered. Its cities burned. Its once vibrant fields turned to ashes. The survivors retreated to the darkest corners of space, their numbers dwindling, their ships hidden away in forgotten parts of the galaxy. The people who survived the war were the last remnants of a once great civilization, now living in isolation, keeping their heads down and hoping never to be found. For 5,000 years, humanity remained silent, a forgotten relic of a past that no one dared to speak of, and yet Earth still lived. On the surface, the planet seemed like any other desolate world. The ruins of ancient cities lay buried beneath centuries of dust, and the oceans once teeming with life were still. The atmosphere, once rich with the energy of billions of humans, now barely supported life. But beneath the surface, deep within, the planet's core, humanity's hidden strength still pulsed. The world had not given up, and neither had its people. Deep beneath the surface, in secret bunkers that had been built before the war, AI systems long forgotten hummed back to life. These systems, designed to protect humanity and ensure their survival, began to stir from their centuries-long slumber. The hidden cities, now deserted and decaying, started to awaken, and with them, the ancient human technology that had been buried for so long. Commander Kale stood in the heart of one such underground facility. The walls were cold and metallic, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. The dim light from overhead flickered as Kale walked through the long corridors, his boots echoing against the walls. He was the leader of the last remaining group of humans, a ragtag collection of survivors who had kept their existence hidden from the galaxy. For years they had lived in peace away from the conflicts of the outside world. But that peace was about to shatter. Kyle had been born into this silence, raised in the depths of the Earth's forgotten cities. He had heard stories of the old world, of the times when humanity had been a force to be reckoned with, but he had never seen it for himself. He had only known the quiet existence of survival, the long years spent hiding from the galaxy that had left them behind. But now, everything was about to change. The signal had come, the message that had broken the silence. At first, it had been just a flicker on their old communication devices, a weak signal that barely reached the outer limits of their hidden base. But as Kale and his team listened to it, they knew this was no ordinary message. The words were clear, piercing through the static like a cry from the past. "We are humanity. We have returned. Prepare for war." The message was simple, but its meaning was immense. The humans were not dead, not gone. They had survived. They were back, and they had not forgotten the galaxy that had abandoned them. The time for silence was over. Kale paused in front of a large monitor, the screen flickering to life as he connected to the main system. The AI, ancient and wise, began to speak in a voice that was both haunting and familiar. "Commander Kale, the systems are online. The war machines are ready. Earth is not lost. We are ready to reclaim what was taken from us." Kale's heart beat faster as the words sank in. The long years of hiding, of waiting, had led to this moment. Humanity was no longer a shadow in the galaxy. They were returning to take their place among the stars. "Prepare the fleet," Kale ordered, his voice firm. "We are going to make them remember who we are." The Galactic Council, an organization formed by the most powerful species in the galaxy, had long thought humanity was a thing of the past. They had assumed that after the war Earth was lost forever, its people wiped out in the Great Conflict. The other species had moved on, building their own empires and exploring the vast reaches of space. To them, the idea of humans returning was absurd. But the message sent from Earth had changed everything. The council convened in a massive chamber, aboard their flagship, the largest ship in the galaxy, to discuss the implications of this sudden reappearance. Leaders from various species gathered around a large holographic table, their faces tense with worry. "This cannot be real," said Varnak, the leader of the largest empire in the galaxy. His species had been the ones who dealt the final blow to humanity during the war. "Humans are extinct. Their technology was no match for ours." "But the signal is clear," said Zilara, a representative of the Zalrik, an ancient race that had lived for thousands of years. "We cannot ignore it. Humanity has returned." "Impossible," Varnak insisted. "We wiped them out. Earth is a dead world." "Perhaps not," Zilara replied, her tone calm. "We must investigate. If the humans have returned, we may have underestimated them. We cannot afford to make the same mistake again." The leaders of the council were divided. Some wanted to immediately crush whatever resistance humanity could muster, but others feared that attacking Earth could lead to a much larger conflict. The humans had been silent for so long, they could not be sure what kind of force they had become. Back on Earth, Kale was preparing for the next step. The ancient warships buried deep in the planet's crust were now ready to launch. These ships, designed for a war long forgotten, were some of the most powerful vessels ever created by humanity. Kyle stood before a massive command console watching as the fleet was activated. "All systems online," a voice called out from the control center. "We are ready to launch." The ships were waiting, their engines glowing softly, ready to take to the stars. Humanity's fleet, small but powerful, was poised to make its return. It was time to send the galaxy a message. As Kale looked out at the stars, he knew that the battle ahead would be difficult. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but they would soon remember. Humanity was back, and they were not going to remain silent any longer. Deep beneath Earth's desolate surface, a quiet storm began to stir. The ancient bunkers that had once housed the greatest minds of humanity began to come back to life. Long-forgotten machines hummed with the pulse of electricity, systems that had been dormant for thousands of years now awakening with a single command. Commander Kale stood before the massive control panel, watching as the lights flickered back to life. The holographic displays above him came to life with data streaming across the screens, a reminder of how much humanity had once accomplished. The bunkers were hidden beneath the planet's crust, far from the prying eyes of the galaxy. They were built to survive, to protect humanity from threats both internal and external. As the systems came online, Kyle felt a rush of pride and fear. Humanity had been hiding for 5,000 years, and now the moment had arrived. Earth's defenses were in place, but they were outdated, relics of a time long gone. Still, they were all they had. And in the silence of the old underground cities, humanity's hope rested on the shoulders of Kale and his people. "We're ready," said Colonel Ivana, Kale's right hand and one of the few remaining leaders of the human resistance. She stood beside him, her eyes scanning the various monitors, watching for any signs of trouble. Ivana was a soldier through and through, tough but sharp. She had been one of the first to believe that humanity wasn't finished, that Earth was not a forgotten planet, lost to the sands of time. "The signal is clear," Kyle said, his voice low and steady. "The galaxy will know we're back, and we're not just looking for survival, we're looking for justice." Ivana nodded, but her gaze was troubled. She knew this war would be unlike any humanity had faced before. The galaxy had moved on, and in the centuries since the last human ships had been seen, the galaxy had forgotten the fear they once held for humanity. The aliens who had once feared Earth's power now saw only a weak, shattered species. "We'll need more than just old war machines to take on the Varnak and the Zul," Ivana said. "They've grown powerful in our absence." "We won't go in alone," Kyle replied. Humanity's strength lies not in numbers, but in determination. We will find allies. With that, Kale turned away from the control panel and walked down the corridor. Behind him, the echoes of soldiers moving in the shadows of the underground complex filled the air. Humanity had not forgotten its past, and neither had its weapons. The ships that had been dormant for millennia were now being prepared for battle. Massive starships the size of small moons stood ready, their dormant engines coming to life for the first time in centuries. These ships had been designed to fight in a galaxy far different from the one Earth had left behind. They were armed, with weapons that were both ancient and advanced, systems so powerful that they could wipe out entire fleets in moments. Yet despite their overwhelming power, the ships were outdated. Their hulls were scarred, their engines rusty. They had not seen combat in centuries, but they would. The time had come. Kale's mind raced. He knew that even with these ships, humanity was vastly outnumbered. The galaxy's ruling powers, like the Varnak and the Zul, had fleets of ships that dwarfed humanity's. These empires had been expanding for centuries while Earth had been hidden away. But Kyle was not afraid. The galaxy had forgotten one thing. Humanity was a force of will, of heart. They could fight not just with machines, but with everything they had inside them, and that's what they would do. Meanwhile, far from Earth, the rest of the galaxy was starting to react to the signal. The Galactic Council convened in a vast chamber, where the leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy gathered. The news of humanity's return had sent shockwaves across the stars. Most of the council had long thought the humans were dead, a species that had fought bravely but ultimately lost to the more powerful alien empires. Now the council was divided. Some were skeptical, refusing to believe that humans had survived the war. They saw the signal as a mistake, perhaps a distress beacon from some forgotten outpost. Others, however, understood the gravity of the situation. If humanity had truly returned, it could change everything. We should not take this lightly, said Zalath, the leader of the Zul, a race known for their deadly technology and immense strength. The humans were formidable warriors in their prime. If they've returned, we may be facing an ancient enemy with the will to destroy us all. The humans were broken. Varnak, the most powerful race in the galaxy, said arrogantly. Their fleets were shattered. Their planet is nothing more than a dead rock. There is nothing to fear from them. You underestimate them, Varnak, Zalath said, her eyes narrowing. They may have been silent for millennia, but they have not forgotten how to fight. We cannot risk underestimating them again. Despite the debate, the council could not come to a consensus. Some members wanted to crush humanity immediately, launching a preemptive strike to wipe them out before they could rebuild their strength. Others wanted to investigate further, but the concern remained. Humanity's return was a wild card. What if Earth's war machines were somehow still intact? What if the humans had allies? The fear of the unknown hung heavily in the chamber. Back on Earth, Kale was not waiting for the Council's decision. His mission was clear: reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. He knew that to do that he would need more than just ancient warships and rusty technology. He would need allies, other species who had suffered under the rule of the Galactic Council and its empires. Kale's first target was a group of rebels known as the Tyrex, a race of alien freedom fighters who had been oppressed by the Zul for centuries. The Tyrex were strong, fast, and resourceful, but they lacked the technology to take on their oppressors. If Kale could convince them to join humanity's cause, their strength could tip the scales in their favor. The Tyrex were located on a distant world, one that had been ravaged by war. Kale's fleet, now fully powered and ready for combat, jumped into hyperspace, heading toward the Tyrex homeworld. As the ships traveled through the dark expanse of space, Kale knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had not been silenced. The time for hiding was over. Humanity was coming for what was rightfully theirs. This part continues the theme of humanity's return, focusing on their preparations for the war ahead. It introduces key alliances and expands the scope of the story, setting up the growing conflict with the rest of the galaxy. The tone remains tense and hopeful, highlighting Kale's determination to lead humanity back to power. Omini. The message from Earth had sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and now the Galactic Council was in a state of deep concern. Leaders from all the major species, once united under the banner of the Council, now faced a serious crisis. Humanity, the aimed species they had believed to be extinct for thousands of years, was alive and preparing for war. The council chamber was vast, its walls lined with holographic projections of stars and distant worlds. At the center of the room, a large round table hosted the galaxy's most influential leaders, each representing a different race with its own agenda. The air was thick with tension as they discussed the unexpected return of humanity. Varnak, the leader of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, slammed his fist down on the table, his eyes flashing with anger. This is absurd. The humans were crushed. Earth was a barren wasteland. They couldn't have survived. You forget, Varnak. Zaloth, the sharp-tongued leader of the Zul, responded coolly. The humans have a way of surviving when no one expects it. We made that mistake once before. We shouldn't make it again. Varnak snarled but said nothing more. The Zul, known for their incredible intellect and terrifyingly advanced technology, had been among the first to learn the true power of humanity. The Varnak Empire had crushed humanity's defenses years ago, but they had not anticipated Earth's resilience. Zaloth had personally witnessed the brutality of the humans' last stand, and she knew firsthand that their will to fight could never be underestimated. A tense silence hung over the chamber until the voice of Ryler, the representative of the Trilon, broke through. His species was known for their neutrality, staying out of most galactic conflicts, but his sharp mind had earned him a seat at the table. Let's consider the facts, Ryler said, his voice calm and measured. The signal we received was not a mistake or a random transmission. It was deliberate. Humanity wants something, and it's not just to hide in the shadows. We must decide whether to ignore them and risk a conflict or to meet them head-on. And if we choose to confront them? Asked Mavic, the leader of the Akron, a species known for their fleet of massive warships. Ryler turned his gaze to Mavic. If we confront them, we may unleash a war we cannot control. Humanity, despite their silence, has been planning this for a long time. They have warships, and they have the will to fight. It's clear that we can't underestimate them, but we also cannot ignore their return. Mavic leaned forward. I agree with Ryler, but I still believe that we should strike before they can build a force large enough to challenge us. If we leave them unchecked, they may become a greater threat than we can imagine. Enough, boomed Varnak, his massive form towering over the table. We will send a fleet to Earth. The humans will learn their place. We crushed them once. We can do it again. A murmur of agreement spread among several factions. Some believed that the humans would be easy to crush once again, but others were not so sure. Zaloth, ever cautious, raised her hand. I disagree, she said. We must tread carefully. If we launch an attack on Earth, we risk not just a military confrontation but the wrath of those who may still be loyal to humanity. The humans were once masters of war. Even if they appear weak, we cannot forget their legacy. Varnak scowled, but he knew that Zaloth's words carried weight. Despite his confidence, he could not ignore the possibility that humanity might still be hiding some secret power. The idea of facing a war they had not anticipated was unsettling, and it was something none of the council members wanted to risk. We cannot wait forever, Varnak said after a long pause. We must act now before they gain more strength. We will send a scouting fleet. If the humans are truly a threat, we'll deal with them as we did before. Ryler interjected. I still recommend caution. I will send envoys to Earth. We must understand their intentions before we make any rash decisions. A full-scale war could destroy everything we've worked for. The Council's unity is at stake. Varnak slammed his fist down again. Enough, the time for diplomacy has passed. The humans have shown their hand, and now we will show them ours. Zaloth watched silently, her mind working. While the other members of the Council bickered, she remained focused on the bigger picture. She knew that the humans' return could be the beginning of something far larger than just a war. The humans were not simply fighting to survive. They were fighting for something more. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy, and that was something no one could ignore. Back on Earth, Commander Kale had been watching the Council's reaction from a secure channel, his face lit by the glow of the holographic projection of the Council's deliberations. He knew what was coming. The Council would not let humanity's return go unchallenged. The Varnak and the Zul were already mobilizing their fleets. The message had been sent. Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was a target. But Kyle wasn't afraid. Humanity had been silent for 5,000 years, but they had not forgotten how to fight. Earth's warships, hidden in the depths of the planet, were now fully operational, and the technology humanity had developed over the centuries was far beyond anything the Council could imagine. "We've waited long enough," Kale said, turning to Ivana and the other officers in the command room. "The time for talking is over. We are not going to cower. We will show them the power of humanity." Ivana nodded. "We've got the ships, Kale, the weapons, but the Council won't come alone. If we're going to survive this, we need more allies. We need the Tyrex." Kale's mind raced as he processed the information. The Tyrex were a race of fierce warriors, but they had been oppressed by the Zul for centuries. They could be the key to tipping the scales in humanity's favor. "I'll send the fleet to their homeworld," Kyle said, his voice unwavering. "The Tyrex will fight with us. I will make sure of it." As Kale left the command room, his thoughts remained focused on the task ahead. Humanity had spent centuries in silence, but that silence had come to an end. The galaxy would soon learn that the humans were no longer forgotten. They were back, and they were ready for war. The Galactic Council's debate continued, but the decisions had been made. Varnak's fleet would move towards Earth, and the galaxy would soon see whether humanity had truly returned to reclaim their place among the stars. But for now, the future was uncertain, and no one knew how this war would end. The Council had decided to act, and now humanity would show them what it meant to be truly alive. The stars were quiet, but Commander Kale knew that silence never lasted long. He stood on the bridge of the Revenant, Earth's largest surviving warship, watching the stars shift as the ship approached the Tyrex homeworld. He could feel it. War was coming. The Galactic Council would not wait long before launching an attack. But Kale wasn't waiting either. For the past weeks, his small human fleet had moved through the outer systems, sending messages, scanning, for survivors and finding old allies. They had repaired warships buried beneath Earth and Mars. They had reactivated battle droids, long forgotten in deep vaults. And now they were reaching out to those who, like humans, had suffered in silence. The Tyrex were the first. The Tyrex were a proud race of warriors, tall, scaled beings with strong arms and fierce hearts. Once they had been free, but after the Zul invaded their world, they were pushed into the mountains, their cities turned into slave factories. The Galactic Council had turned a blind eye to their pain. To the Council, the Tyrex were wild, uncivilized, and unimportant. But to Kale, they were a symbol. Proof that the galaxy still had fire left in it. The Revenant landed outside a small Tyrex camp hidden in the snowy cliffs of their ruined world. Kale stepped down from the ramp with his officers beside him. Dozens of Tyrex warriors stood in silence, their eyes locked on him. Most had never seen a human before. They had only heard stories. A large Tyrex stepped forward. His armor was made of bone and metal, worn from battle, and his deep yellow eyes studied Kale with suspicion. "You are the human commander?" the Tyrex leader growled. "I am Kale of Earth," Kale replied calmly. "I did not come to take. I came to fight. With you, not against you." The Tyrex leader's name was Graykar. He narrowed his eyes. "Why now? The galaxy turned its back on us, and humans vanished. You expect us to trust you now?" Kale took a deep breath. "Because we know what it means to be forgotten, and because the ones who crushed you also crushed us. If we fight together, we can stand tall again. Grakar stared for a long time. Around him, other Tyrex warriors whispered. Finally, Grakar nodded slowly. We fight, not for you, for freedom. Kale smiled. That's enough. Back in the center of the galaxy, the Galactic Council was no longer debating. The time for talk had ended. Varnak's fleet was already moving. Dozens of warships shaped like daggers and colored black as night cut through space toward Earth. They called it a warning strike, but everyone knew the truth. It was war. Inside the lead Varnak warship, Supreme Commander Draal stood before a holographic model of Earth. Crush their defenses, he ordered. Leave a crater where their cities once stood. Any contact? Asked his second-in-command. No, the humans know what's coming. Let them prepare. It won't matter. On Earth, alarms echoed through the underground command center. The scouts had picked up enemy ships approaching from deep space. Ivana rushed to Kale's side. They're here, she said. Varnak warships, a whole fleet. Kale nodded. Good. Let them come. They think we'll break easily. Let's show them how wrong they are. He turned to the communications officer. Signal the fleet, move to intercept, and get me a connection. To the Tyrex. It's time. Within hours, the human warfleet launched from secret bases on the Moon, Mars, and Earth's hidden hangars. Sleek, dark ships powered by old fusion drives and new AI guidance systems surged into the blackness of space. The Tyrex warriors, now armed with human weapons and armor, launched their own ships to join the fight. Humanity didn't have numbers, but they had something the Council didn't expect: strategy, unity, and fury. The two fleets met near the orbit of a frozen moon on the edge of Earth's system. It was the first major battle between humanity and the Council in over 5,000 years. The Varnak ships came in fast, firing heavy plasma bolts. Their strategy was clear: overwhelm and destroy. But Kale had studied their movements, their tactics. He knew their weaknesses. The human ships didn't meet them head-on. They scattered, split, and moved like shadows. Their AI systems calculated enemy fire before it was launched, allowing them to dodge with precision. Smaller strike teams of Tyrex warriors boarded Varnak vessels, planting explosives and disabling engines from the inside. Kyle sat calmly in the command chair of the Revenant, watching the battle unfold. Target the lead cruiser. Bring it down. The Revenant's main cannon charged and fired a beam of white-hot energy straight through the enemy ship. It tore the cruiser apart in one strike, and debris exploded in all directions. The Varnak, shocked by the unexpected resistance, tried to retreat, but the humans had surrounded them. One by one, their ships fell. By the end of the battle, more than half of the Varnak fleet had been destroyed. The rest limped away, leaving Earth untouched. When the news reached the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. They destroyed an entire fleet? One member cried. They had help, another muttered. The Tyrex have joined them. Varnak himself stood in silence, unable to believe the defeat. It wasn't just a loss, it was a warning. Humanity wasn't just alive. They were fighting, back, smarter and stronger than before. Salath, leader of the Zul, spoke quietly. This is not the same enemy we faced before. These are not the humans of the past. They have changed. And now, she added, looking around the chamber, so must we. Back on Earth, the human fleet returned to hidden bases. Repairs began immediately. Losses were light, but the war had only just begun. Commander Kyle stood on a hill overlooking the old ruins of a human city. The stars above were quiet again, but he knew it wouldn't last. Ivana approached. The galaxy knows now. We're not weak. They'll come harder next time. Kyle nodded. Then we'll fight harder. We've shown them that Earth doesn't fall easily, and now others will listen. Others? She asked. Kale smiled. There are more out there, more like the Tyrex. We're going to find them. We're going to build something stronger than any fleet. He looked to the stars. This is no longer just about Earth. It's about justice. for all of us who were forgotten. And so, as the galaxy reeled from humanity's unexpected strength, Earth stood tall for the first time in millennia, not as a broken planet, but as a beacon of resistance. The war had begun, but this time, humanity was ready. The stars had always been distant, cold, but now they seemed closer, brighter. The silence of space had been shattered by the hum of engines and the roar of battle. Commander Kale stood before the viewports of the Revenant, watching as the remnants of the Varnak fleet limped away from Earth's orbit. The victory, though hard-earned, was only the beginning. "We've won this round," Kale said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. But the war is far from over. Beside him, Colonel Ivana watched the stars shift in the distance, her expression grim. The Varnak are only the first. The Zul, the Akron, and countless others are watching. They'll make their move soon. Kale nodded, turning away from the viewport. "We need more allies. We can't win this alone." Ivana raised an eyebrow. "More allies? The Tyrex are already on our side. We've got a fleet now and weapons. What more do we need?" "We need a cause," Kyle replied. "Something that's bigger than just us. Something that can unite all the oppressed species in the galaxy. We can't just be a force fighting to survive. We need to be a force fighting for something greater." Across the galaxy, word of the humans' unexpected victory had spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the loss of an entire fleet, had begun making preparations. The Varnak had been humiliated, but they were not done. They would regroup. They would strike again. But they were not the only ones who had taken notice. Far beyond the reaches of known space, on a forgotten world shrouded in shadow, a small group of rebels watched the events unfold. They had been living in hiding, fighting against the oppressive forces of the Galactic Council for years. Their numbers were few, their ships old and worn, but their hearts burned with the same desire for freedom that had driven humanity for centuries. Among them was Lyra, a leader of the Olan, a species that had been enslaved by the Akron for decades. Her people had been hunted, their cities destroyed, their resources stolen. The Olan were no strangers to pain. But as they watched humanity's victory, Lyra felt something stirring deep inside her, a hope long buried. "This could be our chance," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her words. "We have to contact them, the humans. They're not just fighting for Earth, they're fighting for all of us." Her second-in-command, a sharp-eyed Olan named Griv, nodded. "You're right. If we join forces with them, maybe we can finally stand against the Akron. The humans have proven that they're not afraid to fight back." The decision was made. Lyra activated the old communication device, sending a signal toward the nearest human fleet. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. If the humans could defeat the Varnak, maybe they could help the Olan too. Back on Earth, Kale was still strategizing when the message came in. It was faint, barely a blip on the radar, but it was there. A call for help from a distant part of the galaxy. "Commander," Ivana said, her voice sharp, "you need to see this." Kale stepped over to the communications desk where a crackling hologram flickered to life. It was a message from Lyra, leader of the Olan. "We have fought for years under the boot of the Akron." Lyra's voice echoed, the desperation clear in her tone. "We have no more strength to give, but you, humans, you've shown us that there is hope. Please help us." Kale's heart raced as the message ended. "The Akron are ruthless," he murmured. "But if they're as bad as we've heard, the Olan won't survive much longer without help." Ivana's eyes narrowed. "We don't have time to waste. The Varnak won't stay down for long and the Zul will be watching, waiting. If we ignore this, the Akron will sweep through the Olan and take their resources. If they fall, it sends a message to every species in the galaxy. Humans are weak." "We're not weak," Kale replied, his voice hardening. "It's time to make our move. We'll help the Olan. We'll unite the oppressed forces of the galaxy. And we'll make sure the Council understands that we will not be silenced again." The Revenant departed Earth's orbit a few hours later, its engines roaring as it cut through the stars bound for the Olan's homeworld. The small fleet of human ships, joined by the Tyrex, moved swiftly and quietly, entering a sector of space that had been long forgotten by most of the galaxy. As they approached the Olan homeworld, Kale could feel the weight of what they were about to do. They weren't just coming to help. They were coming to send a message to the Council, to the Varnak, to anyone who had forgotten about humanity's strength. "We won't stop until the Council knows what we're capable of," Kale said to Ivana, standing on the bridge once again, watching the stars swirl outside. Ivana didn't reply immediately. She was watching the holo map, where the Olan world came into view. The planet was beautiful in its own way, with large oceans and sprawling green landscapes. But it was scarred by war. Hundreds of cities had been destroyed in Ekron attacks. People were hiding in caves and under mountains. The Ekron had taken everything they wanted. "They think we're the last resistance," Ivana said softly. "They think Earth has no power, no will. They're wrong, and they'll find that out soon." The moment they arrived, Kale sent a message to Lyra, letting her know they had come. Within minutes, the Olan rebels emerged from the shadows, cautiously, approaching the human ships. Lyra was the first to step forward, her eyes filled with disbelief. "You actually came." "We came to fight," Kale replied, "and we're not stopping until the Council falls." The Olan surrounded them, and for the first time in years, hope began to spread among the oppressed. The humans had not come as conquerors or saviors. They had come as equals, offering not just their weapons but their knowledge, their tactics, and their unwavering determination. "We will fight with you," Lyra said, her voice filled with newfound strength. "Together we will take back what's ours." The Olan, the Tyrex, and the humans now stood together, united by a cause larger than any one species. The Council had underestimated the power of hope. They had underestimated humanity. The war had only begun, but the tides had already started to turn. As Kale and his newfound allies began to prepare for the battles to come, they knew one thing for certain: they would not back down. The rising tide of resistance would soon sweep across the galaxy, and no force would be able to stop them. The Council had never seen anything like this, and soon they would understand that humanity was not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the freedom of every species in the galaxy that had ever been oppressed. And they would win. The galaxy was about to change. In the shadows of the stars, beneath the watchful eyes of the Galactic Council, a rebellion was rising. What had begun as a small skirmish on Earth had now become a full-scale resistance movement. The Tyrex, the Olan, and other oppressed species had united under the banner of humanity. They had one goal: to overthrow the Council and end their reign of tyranny once and for all. Commander Kale stood at the helm of the Revenant, his eyes fixed on the view of the galaxy ahead. The fleet, now larger than ever, was moving swiftly through hyperspace, heading toward a new battlefield. The Olan had joined them, and the Tyrex were fully committed to the cause. The next phase of the war had begun. "We have the support of the Olan, the Tyrex, and others," Ivana said, standing beside Kale. "But the Council is vast. Varnak, Zul, Ekron, all of them. They won't go down easily. They have the entire galaxy at their disposal." Kale nodded. "I know, but we've shown them we're not a species to be ignored. We've been silent for too long. Now it's time to make our voices heard." He turned to face the command crew. "Prepare for the next phase. We're going to take the fight to the Council." The Galactic Council had already begun to react to the growing resistance. The defeat of the Varnak fleet had shaken them, and the rise of this new alliance sent ripples of fear through the ruling leaders. They had thought humanity was broken, erased from history, but now they were seeing the truth. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived in the shadows, gathering strength for the day when they would rise again. In the heart of the Council chamber, the leaders gathered once more. Varnak, still furious about his loss, stood before the holographic display, his claws gripping the table. "This is an insult," he growled. "The humans have united other races, the Tyrex and Olan, They're working together. This cannot stand. Zalath, the leader of the Zul, spoke calmly. We cannot underestimate them. We saw the destruction of an entire Varnak fleet. The humans have more than just ships. They have the will to fight. This is no longer a simple matter of crushing them. If we don't act quickly, we may find ourselves facing a rebellion on a scale we've never seen. The room fell silent. The other leaders exchanged uneasy glances. The fear was palpable. The thought of a united galaxy, one that could stand up to the Council, was terrifying. The Council had been in power for centuries, but now a new force was rising. We need to crush them before they get any stronger, Varnak snarled. Zalath nodded. Agreed, but we must do it with precision. If we act recklessly, we risk losing control of the entire galaxy. The rebellion has already gained too much ground. The humans have shown their strength, Varnak said. We will meet them head-on. We cannot allow this to spread any further. Meanwhile, on the human fleet, Kale and his allies were making their final preparations. They had learned from their previous victories that speed and surprise were their greatest assets. The Galactic Council's forces were vast, but they were spread thin. Kale's fleet, now more than a dozen ships strong, was prepared to strike when the Council least expected it. Where do we strike first? Ivana asked, looking over the strategic map that displayed the various systems under the Council's control. Kale's finger hovered over the holographic map. We go after their weakest link. Akron's homeworld is heavily guarded, but there's one system, far from their core, that's not as protected. It's a small system with little military presence, but it controls a crucial trade route. If we take it, we can choke off the Council's supplies. They'll be forced to divert forces to defend it, and we'll have the upper hand. Ivana nodded. That'll draw their attention away from the inner systems. It's a bold move, Kale. It's the only move, Kale said firmly. We've waited too long to strike. We can't keep playing defense. It's time we show the Council that the galaxy is no longer theirs to control. The fleet moved into position, and the battle began. Kale's forces, now united with the Olan and the Tyrex, attacked the lightly defended system with precision. The Akron, who had been ruling over the system, were caught off guard. Their defenses were weak, and their ships were scattered, unable to mount an organized defense against the combined might of the rebel fleet. Human warships, with their advanced AI and experienced crews, quickly overwhelmed the Akron forces. Tyrex warriors boarded enemy ships with brutal efficiency, while Olan fighters took to the skies in swarms, tearing through the enemy fleet with deadly precision. The battle was swift but intense. Within hours, the Akron forces had been completely routed, and the rebel fleet controlled the system. Kyle stood on the bridge of the Revenant, watching as the last of the Akron ships surrendered. His eyes narrowed as the fleet regrouped. This victory was only a small step, but it sent a message to the Council. Humanity and its allies were no longer to be underestimated. Signal the fleet. Let's move to the next target, Kale ordered. Ivana stepped forward. Kale, there's something else. I've been monitoring Council communications. They're mobilizing their fleets. They're coming for us. We've gained their attention. Kale's face hardened. Then we'll make sure they regret it. Back in the heart of the Council's territory, the leaders were scrambling. The loss of the Akron system was only the beginning. The rebellion was spreading, and the Council's once unshakable grip on the galaxy was slipping. They had underestimated the power of unity, of species joining forces for a common cause. The Council had always believed that their control was absolute, but the resistance was proving otherwise. We must stop them now, Varnak said, his voice full of rage. If we let them grow any stronger, they will threaten everything we've built. We cannot let this rebellion continue. Zalath nodded. We will take the fight to them. It's time to end this, once and for all. The next few weeks were filled with constant battles, as Kale's fleet moved from system to system, striking quickly and decisively. With each victory, more species joined the rebellion. The message was spreading. Freedom was within reach. But the Council was not done. They were preparing for their final, most brutal offensive. The fleets of the Varnak, Ekron, and Zul were gathering, ready to crush the rebellion in a single overwhelming blow. Kyle knew this was coming. He had expected it. But now, he was ready. The final battle would decide everything. And Kale was determined that humanity would not just survive, it would thrive. No longer in the shadows, but standing tall, united with their allies, ready to claim their place in the galaxy.